On the 21st of March 1918, the German army launched a major offensive against Allied lines. The Kaiserschlacht, Operation Michael, was launched to attempt to break the Allied lines and allow Germany to seize the Channel ports and deal a significant blow to her enemies. The Allied forces were thrown into a bitter defensive action all along the front. Among them was Lieutenant Allan Ker. He had been commissioned into the 3rd Battalion Gordon Highlanders and joined the Machine Gun Corps as a section officer with the 61st Battalion of the Machine Gun Corps.
The 61st Battalion of the Machine Gun Corps was formed on the 1st of March 1918. It was formed from the 182nd, 183rd, 184th and 267th Machine Gun Companies. These were the brigade machine gun companies that supported the individual brigades since 1916, and then the 267th was the Reserve Machine Gun Company, which had been introduced in 1917 as an additional divisional asset. Each machine gun company consisted of 4 sections, each of 4 Vickers machine guns, commanded by a subaltern, usually a lieutenant. There were 16 guns in a company, commanded by a major, and a total of 64 machine guns in the battalion, a lieutenant colonel's command. The 61st Battalion was part of the 61st Division. The original companies had been formed in Grantham in June 1916, and then joined the division on the 20th of June. They quickly entered the battle and fought through the actions at Fromelles in June and July 1916. Later, in operations on the Ancre in July 1917, the German retreat to the Hindenburg line in April that year, and then the Battle of Ypres in August and September, which included the battle at Langemarck in August. Eventually they were part of the German counterattacks fought against the German counterattacks in early December 1917, which was the last engagement before forming the battalion on the 1st of March. The Battle of St. Quentin was the first action that the battalion had after it had been formed. The battalion remained in service, had actions later in 1918, and stayed in service for the rest of the war, before being demobilised in January 1919 and eventually being fully disbanded in August 1919.
Ker first saw action in France in 1915 and would also serve in Salonika in 1916, but was sent home to recover from a bout of malaria. Following his recovery, he was promoted to First Lieutenant and would return to the Western Front in 1917. It was while on this second posting to the trenches of France, on that first day of the Grand German Offensive, he would win a Victoria Cross, the British Army's highest award for bravery. This would be the 4th VC awarded to a member of the Machine Gun Corps during the Great War. Ker's section was located near the French town of St. Quentin, between the villages of Francilly, Salceny and Savy. To the south of his position was a redoubt known as Manchester Hill, where Lieutenant Colonel Wilfrid Elstob of the Manchester Regiment would also be awarded a VC, although posthumously, for his leadership in the defence of the redoubt on the same day that Ker would win his VC. The 61st Battalion War Diary from March 1918 describes the mood in the sector in the days leading up to the start of the offensive. 18th of March 1918. Front normal, nothing to report, casualties nil. 20th of March 1918. Very quiet, aerial activity nil, casualties 1, accidentally wounded. However, the entries into the diary suddenly spring to life, documenting the first day of the largest German offensive of the war. Enemy started an intensive bombardment at 4:40 am on forward and back areas. His infantry advanced to the attack at 9:30 am. The order to man battle stations was ordered about 4:50 am. Owing to the thick fog, little is known of the fighting on the front lines, but Ellis and Eggen redoubts were still holding out at about 11 am. Ker was quickly involved in heavy fighting from the outset of the German attack, the enemy outflanking his position and attacking in great numbers. Ker engaged them with a Vickers machine gun. His medal citation from the London Gazette from the 2nd of September reads: Lieutenant Ker, with 1 Vickers gun, succeeded in engaging the enemy's infantry, approaching under cover of dead ground, and held up the attack, inflicting many casualties. He then sent back word to his battalion headquarters that he had determined to stop with his sergeant and several men who had been badly wounded, and fight until a counterattack could be launched to relieve him. Just as ammunition failed, his party were attacked from behind by the enemy with bombs, machine guns and with the bayonet. Several bayonet attacks were delivered, but each time they were repulsed by Lieutenant Kerr and his companions with their revolvers, the Vickers gun having by this time been destroyed. After seeing off these attacks, the wounded were assembled in a small shelter, and it was decided that these men would be defended to the last. With ammunition at a minimum, Kerr once again stood ready to defend to the last with his revolver and bayonet. The citation continues. Although Lieutenant Kerr was very exhausted from want of food and gas poisoning, and from the supreme exertions he had made during 10 hours of the most severe bombardment, fighting and attending to the wounded, he refused to surrender until all his ammunition was exhausted, and his position was rushed by large numbers of the enemy. His behaviour throughout the day was absolutely cool and fearless, and by his determination, he was materially instrumental in engaging and holding up for 3 hours more than 500 of the enemy. In the chaos brought upon the Allied lines during the first days of that German offensive, Kerr was presumed missing along with 13 other officers from the battalion. However, Kerr was captured after his heroic last stand and spent the rest of the war in a POW camp. As well as those officers, an estimated 320 were also missing as of 22nd of March to the 31st of March. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission records 41 as having died from the 61st Battalion. These losses meant the battalion spent the weeks immediately following in a period of training and reorganisation before returning to the line in mid-April. After his release in November of 1918, Kerr finally received his Victoria Cross on the 26th of November 1919 by King George V. He would later be one of the 100 VC recipients to form the Guard of Honour escorting the gun carriage to the tomb of the unknown soldier on the 11th of November 1920. Later in his military career, Kerr was promoted to the rank of Major, and he was placed on the Reserve of Officers list by the Army in 1922, having been effectively demobilised, after being attached to the War Office staff as a staff officer. In the interwar period, he was recalled into the Army in 1940 and served on the Chief of the Imperial Staff at the War Office during the Second World War. He passed away at the age of 75 on the 12th of September 1958. For their bravery in the face of the first day of the biggest German offensive of the Great War, the 61st Battalion, MGC, were thanked by Sir Douglas Haig in a dispatch on the 28th of March 1918. The following has been received from the Army Commander. By the grand and stubborn way you were holding out and delaying the advance of the enemy, your great exertions and sacrifices are not being thrown away. They are of immense importance, and your resistance and deeds in this great battle will live on for all time and will save our country. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this first episode in a series of videos detailing the recipients of the Victoria Cross from the Machine Gun Corps during the Great War. Many of these men did not consider themselves heroes, but these stories give us an insight into the actions that more soldiers would have experienced, possibly carrying out similar but without the subsequent recognition. These videos form a part of a year of events to remember the Corps and its disbandment in 1922. And be sure to join us on the 16th of July at the National Army Museum in London to learn more. For more on the Machine Gun Corps and the Vickers gun, make sure to follow the Vickers MG Collection and Research Association on social media and stay tuned for more. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. And stay tuned for more military history.